What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So, Michigan State basketball kicks off the 2024-2025 season on Monday against Monmouth at 7 o'clock in the Breslin Center. But we're not here to preview that game yet. We are here to preview the entire season for Michigan State. Going to go through every player on the roster, what we think that they can do well for this team this year, some things to watch out for them, and then as a group, things to watch for throughout the season, best case, worst case for the team, and then lastly, my prediction for where I think this team will be at come March and March Madness. Before we do jump into that, though, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down there for more Michigan State basketball content on the channel throughout the season. Obviously, basketball season here is just kicking off. Football season here for Michigan State in the latter third of the schedule. Bunch of other stuff on the channel too, so make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss a video all season long. So we're going to jump in. Last year, obviously, Michigan State loses in the second round of the NCAA tournament to North Carolina. And coming into this year, Michigan State is projected to finish fifth. That was from the Big Ten media poll. And really, I just want to jump in to the players here first. You're going to start out with your starting point guard, Jeremy Fears. Last year, played in 12 games, about 15 minutes a game, 3.5 points per game, 40 assists to 13 turnovers. It's a solid ratio. Was only 1 for 6 from 3, though. You know, you saw him hit some during the summer season in Spain and in the exhibition games this past month of October. And I think that would add another layer to this offense if he's able to occasionally knock those 3-pointers down. He's got to be the leader that we all have expected that he would be for this thing to work out, and that Izzo has talked him up to be, you know, from his recruitment till now. You know, he's talked about him liking him to Mateen Cleaves, and you don't just throw those words around easily. Obviously, Tom Izzo does not. So, big shoes to fill and live up to, but I think Jeremy has it in him to do that. But really, as I said, you know, him being the leader and of this whole group is really going to determine a lot of things here for us. You know, obviously him leading vocally, internally, pushing the ball, getting us into our sets, being that vocal leader, as I said, just setting guys up across the roster to be successful. A lot to put on the shoulders of a redshirt freshman who, you know, obviously went through a lot last year, but I think he can handle it. Next up, Jaden Akins. You know, coming into this year, widely expected to be the guy for this team. He struggled over the summer in Spain and in the 2 exhibition games shooting the ball, but I thought he's defended pretty well and done some of the little things well. Besides scoring and defense, I think rebounding and crashing that glass is so important for him to make an impact on this team this year. Last year, 3.9 rebounds a game. Would like to see that closer to 5 with the long rebounds opportunities, both on offense and on defense. But him playing his natural position at the 2 should hopefully help free him up from getting so taxed on the defensive end, guarding bigger wings, and having bigger wings guard him on the offensive side of the ball. Last year, averaged 10.4 points per game. For MSU to have a successful year, I think he has to fall in that 13 to 18 range. You know, it's really been, you know, kind of discussed between him and our next guy that we'll talk about, Frankie Fiddler, who's going to be the one guy, the guy on this team to carry the scoring load, go get you a bucket. And we'll talk a little bit more about Frankie up next, but Jaden is more equipped, or we've seen more of him being able to do it with the ball in his hands, which sometimes it's like, hey, we haven't scored in 4 minutes. Jaden, go get a bucket. We've seen that some throughout his career, but obviously he's been playing out of position because he's been playing with A.J. Hoggard, Tyson Walker. So it's been, you know, those guys that have been the bell cows for those type of situations. Now we get to see Jaden Akins do it. Is there a little, like, red flag, like, starting to creep up that he's struggled so much? I mean, it's there, like, it's in the pocket. It's, you know, it's in your pocket, but my hand's not on it yet. I'm not ready to get close to start waving it. Haven't even seen a regular season game yet, but I know that's the chatter out there. Worried, you know, what can happen this season. But I'm confident that Jaden will eventually get it going. And the good thing is that he's not stopping defending. He's not stopping doing the little things. So as soon as he starts to see a couple shots go down in some regular season games, I think things can start to roll for him and things can free up for him. Next up, the Omaha transfer, Frankie Fiddler. Coming in, he averaged 20 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists last year on 45, 36, 85 splits. Now, I don't expect that 20 points per game to translate directly to the Big Ten. That's not saying he can't have an incredible year scoring the ball. But I think it's fair to say that he should fall between that 12 to 17 points per game this year and possibly increase that 3-point percentage a little bit with getting more set 3-point opportunities with the playmakers that we have on this roster. You know, not just Jeremy Fears, as we mentioned, but Trey Holloman, Jace Richardson, even Jaden Akins as well. You'll see him coming off a lot of pin downs, a lot of rip curls, but he also does a good job of dissecting you with the ball in his hands. I don't think that he's going to be someone that, you know, will constantly bring the ball up and, you know, blow by you, but he's someone who can get the ball, dissect the defense, get to where he wants to get to on the court, and draw fouls and get to the free throw line, which we saw at against Ferris State in the second exhibition game. And that's something that he was lauded for at Omaha, and a big reason why a lot of Michigan State people were excited about bringing him in this summer. Next up, Xavier Booker. Last year, obviously not seeing the playing time that anyone wanted, himself or the fan base wanted last year, but he comes into his sophomore year as the starting four. Last year, that 9-minute per game average, that should be in the mid to high 20s at least this season. Last year, we saw flashes on the offensive side of the ball. The pick and pop opportunities, mostly a little bit of back to the basket we saw a little bit last year. But the summer in Spain and these two exhibition games, we've seen a lot more on offense. Yes, the pick and pop game is still there and lethal, and I think will probably be the biggest part of his game in this offense this year. But some refinement of that back to the basket game, getting over his right shoulder and pulling up, and even saw him be able to pump fake from the 3-point line, put the ball on the ground and get to the lane. Plus, had a nice finish and dunk in traffic in the Ferris State game, too. So he's put on quite a bit of weight this offseason, which is good. But hopefully that weight will help on the defensive side of the ball, which is where we've seen some struggles last year. And that is where he will need to continue to grow here in year two, knowing is that no one is asking him to be an all Big Ten defensive team member or have an all Big Ten defensive team performance. But the lapses on defense and in the pick and roll defense has to improve. Also, the rebounding 1.7 average last year, which is not going to cut it. Has to bring that to around 5 to 7 a game, which obviously that 1.7 last year in 9 minutes a game average isn't indicative, but if he can, you know, increase that to 5 for 7, then I think he'll have a successful season here and help the team out greatly in that category, which it has struggled rebounding over the last couple years. Next up, Jackson Kohler. In my opinion, with his play, especially over the summer and the exhibitions, should have earned the starting nod at center. Starting day, you know, opening game lineup isn't set yet, but we have seen that Tom Izzo has gone with Simone Zapala, who we'll talk a little bit more about later, at that starting five. But with his improvement that we've seen over the summer and the exhibitions, as I said, I think he should be that starting five. Yes, will there be defensive mismatches for Jackson, sitting at just 6'9"? Yes, but ideally, if he were to start and play along Xavier Booker, Book's length and continual growth on the defensive end should help offset the height difference from Jackson Kohler. And it's also not like, yes, he'll, you know, get got if, you know, someone has some incredible post moves down there. But it's not like he's a slouch. It's not just, you know, an easy basket down there. He's going to make you work for it a little bit, at least. And, you know, so I think we've seen improvements from him on the defensive side of the ball as well. So yes, on, you know, a wide shot view, it could be a smaller front court, but I think it gives you the best lineup that you can put out there as of right now if you're playing a traditional center. We've seen him rebound well during the offseason and in the exhibition games, including 11 versus Ferris State. That will have to continue into the season. But the biggest thing for him this season will be playing with poise and strength on the block and near the paint. We saw last year, and even in this year's exhibition games a little bit, turning the ball over from the post, you know, if teams come in double or help down, you know, him losing the ball, getting it stolen, got to shore that up, and getting to his moves quicker, or kicking it out if the double teams come. Just because you kick it out doesn't mean you can't get it back. If you kick it out, then maybe the guard or the wing readjusts and gets it back down. Then you can readjust, get back into your move quicker, and, you know, avoid those post turnovers. Next up, Trey Holloman. Had a really incredible year last year. The jump from his freshman year to sophomore year was incredible to see last year. Now we're going to need another jump his sophomore to junior year. A solid and steady hand that can play multiple positions, 1 through 3, really. will compete defensively, and last year had a solid assist-turnover ratio, 84-30. Yes, he probably will be the first person off the bench to spell Jeremy Fears at that backup point guard position. But at times you will see him and Fears playing together in a 2-point guard lineup. But you can also see him leading that group off the bench when Fears is out and helping along the freshmen Jace Richardson and Kurt Tang, and I think he'll be a great help for them off that bench. And I think it'll be the most important for him to be that connector for this team, leading that second unit while also playing starter-type minutes. Last year shot an incredible 43% from three-point range. Would love to see that to continue this year, especially playing off ball with Jeremy Fears now back in the fold. You know, you got a guy that can set you up. Obviously, AJ Hogarth last year could set you up as well, and you see how he thrived in that. Shot 43% last year, and that jump from freshman year to sophomore year, especially from the three-point shot. You know, Trey wasn't a guy that you were like, oh, this is a sniper, this is a knockdown three-point shooter, and he proved everyone wrong last year that, yes, he can be just that. Next up, Cohen Carr. Incredible athleticism aside, he's made incredible strides since the end of last year. Yes, we will always love the breakaway, highlight reel dunks, the dunks in traffic, all that. But I think he's figuring out how to use that athleticism in the half court, which I think will be key. Even though Michigan State does want to obviously get back to running the way that they used to, I think that when they do need to slow the game down, or if it's a defensive slog and you can't get out and run and you need to operate in the half court, him being able to figure out how to use his athleticism on the offensive side of the ball in the half court will be key for him staying on the court in those type of situations. Obviously, still needs to work on that jumper. I know he has this summer, but for me, it is mainly about knocking down free throws for him. Last year shot 56%. That has to come up. You're not going to ask him, even though we did see in the end of half situation against Ferris State, I don't know if it was just personnel. They weren't expecting Ferris to come out in a I think they came out in a 1-2-2 zone type of zone situation that, you know, allowed him that they had to call a play, and he was just in the position that was getting the corner three at the end of the first half versus Ferris. But you're not going to see 3-point shots or, you know, long two jumpers from Cohen that will be either drawn up or that he'll be taking. Yes, occasionally he will have to take them, but him using that athleticism, getting to the rim, and being able to knock down those free throws at a higher clip would be incredible for him and this team. And I think, too, him being able to play make off of that. Like, yes, if they're in a, you know, 5-out or out situation and he does get the ball on a swing, him being able to blow by, drive to the basket, or swing it back, backdoor cut to the basket, being able to effectively put the ball on the floor and score, play make, I think will be key for him on the offensive side. Rebounding and defense, though, are going to be key for him this season to making a big contribution off the bench. And also, please, 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 please play him at the 4, not the 3. It is such a better positional fit for his skill set. Now, we've talked about it at length during the summer, some of the previews, the recaps, and whatnot, but it just doesn't positionally make sense to play him at the 3. For some of the stuff we just mentioned, he is not a volume 3-point shooter. Yes, he can handle the ball a little bit, but he's not going to take your ankles with anything. Put him at the 4, let him run, play make, operate around the basket. I mean, having him in that dunker spot and just setting him up and the team up for success because, and I won't go off too much on a tangent here. We'll get back to it later. Move forward to some of our freshmen, Jace Richardson. I think he's going to have a special career here at Michigan State. What we've seen so far with his basketball IQ and feel for the game translate to the college game already. He's played well in Spain and in the 2 exhibition games, and as I said, throughout those games, he's going to force himself on the floor this year. I think the beginning of the year, based on trends so far in the exhibition games, I think you could see him anywhere from 12 to 16 minutes to start the year. But by February, I think he'll be closer to 18 to 20 minutes a game. That's how special of a year I think Jace is going to have here. Next up, Carson Cooper. Coming in, he has to be one of the best defensive anchors for this group when he's in the game. Led the team in blocks last year with 23, had 15 steals as well. He's going to need a similar output, if not increase those numbers a little more, would be even better. Rebounding average, 4.4, obviously minutes dependent. That has to be about 7 plus depending on his minutes, as we said. But the offensive side of the ball, you know, got to hit free throws, 63% last year, while shooting the 4th most free throws on the team. So that number has to come up this year. Convert on those easy points. Next up, one of our transfers, Simone Zappala, operating so far as the starting center. We've seen some good things in the dribble handoff, DHO action, and being a big presence in the paint. Had nine rebounds against Northern Michigan, but he did have 3 or 4 illegal screens versus Ferris State as well. So you got to clean that up. And listen, I think Coop and him are kind of similar archetypes, and Tom Izzo has been rolling with the 2 big lineup. So it's been Simone starting, Coop as the backup center. Even though it seems blatantly obvious that the 2 big lineup isn't as effective, he should consistently get minutes if coach continues to roll these type of 2 big lineups out there and doesn't play Booker and Kohler at the 5, where they would greatly thrive and help the team flow so much better. But we'll move on to another freshman. Kur Tang has shown his ability to knock down shots in Spain and in the exhibition games. And I think coming in, when he does get into the game, being ready to knock down those shots will be key for him this year. But I've also liked that we've seen him attack the glass, really, on the offensive side of the ball, getting those long offensive rebounds. If he can do that and defend when he's on the court, he can carve out some minutes this season. Next up, Garrick Norman, redshirted last year, is a really good shooter that will be needed on this team. Obviously, the comparisons to Matt McQuaid coming in from high school, it'll be if he can have the defensive evolution that we saw Matt McQuaid have throughout his career. That'll determine how much he sees the floor, I believe. He is banged up right now, sidelined with a knee injury, but he was expected to be out a few weeks. That was on October 1st. We didn't see him in any exhibition action in October, so we'll see when he's able to get back on the court. I believe I did just see it before I started recording here that he was back practicing and full today, but it'll still be a little bit before he's ready for game action. Now jumping into some things to watch for this season. The 2 big lineups, we already talked about it. Playing those 2 big lineups, even though their best lineups, seems to be clear as day without the 2 bigs, evident from the Ferris State exhibition, where Izzo even said in the postgame that his best lineup was the one with Jax Kohler at the 5 and Booker at the 4. The kind of small ball lineup, if you want to call it that. And, you know, it's obvious. We can see it. I'm not claiming to know more than the coaching staff or Tom Izzo. That would be idiotic. I'm not. But when it just seems so obvious, and it looks so much better when they run this lineup with Jax at the 5, Book at the 4. And when Cohen's in the game, Book at the 5, Cohen at the 4, or Jax at the 5, Cohen at the 4. Looks so much better, feels so much better, flows so much better. Keep an eye on this season if any of that changes. Next up, Cohen Carr, as we kind of already talked about, so won't touch too much on it here, but Cohen Carr playing the 3. He needs to play the 4. We've harped on it. As we said, so out of position at the 3 because of the lack of shooting in his career as of right now. That's not saying he can't become a good 3-point shooter in his career, but right now that is not his game, and it hampers the whole offense when he's on the floor and not playing the 4 position. And it's not his fault. If you have Book at the 4 with him, it helps a little because Book can stretch the floor, but if you have Jax at the 4, who can shoot, but not at the same volume that, you know, a Xavier Booker can shoot from the 4 position, and you have Coop or Simone Zappala at the 5, then it's a stagnant offense. And so much pressure is on the 1s and 2s to score from outside the paint, and the only way you can mask that a little bit is if you have Book at the 4, Jax at the 5, and you have Cohen at the 3, because then you have a 4 and a 5 who can stretch out to the 3-point line to provide more shooting, and then you have Cohen can operate the dunker spot or other athletic positions on the offensive side of the ball. Next up, I think these freshmen, Jace Richardson and Kur Tang, as I said, are going to have big impacts on this team and season. Talked about the reasons before, as we said, but really Jace specifically has just been so impressive so far. Regular season hasn't started yet, I know, but I'm all aboard the Jace Richardson hype train fan club right now, right at the front of the line for that. Basketball IQ, instinctual play, I think is going to be a nice jolt off the bench with Trey Holloman. Kur Tang, if he can knock down his shots, as we said, and crash the offensive glass, he can carve out a big role off the bench on this team in the bench unit, and especially early in the season with Garrick still a little bit banged up. Really, this season, in my opinion, comes down to 2 things. Can the sophomore class of Jeremy Fears, Xavier Booker, and Cohen Carr take a leap in production? Obviously, now they all have bigger responsibilities, bigger roles. Can they make that jump? Second, it comes to someone emerging as the #1 go-to guy. You're assuming it's going to be Jaden Akins or Frankie Fiddler, with how many opportunities those guys will get on the wings, and Jaden even with the ball in his hands a little more. Like, yes, I think it would be great if Xavier Booker led us in scoring, but I think both Jaden and Frankie will get so many more shots and so much more volume and they can do it with the ball in their hands. We've seen Book operate a little bit with the ball in his hands, but one of those guys I think is probably going to have to step up to be the #1 option. Don't get me wrong. If Book proves me wrong and it's just like, no, I can score 18 points a game, then yeah, I would obviously love that. And I think if he does that, he'll be a lottery pick this year. That's how talented he is. That's what we thought coming in, that we were probably going to get 1, possibly 2 years of him, and he was, going to the draft. And if he does that this year, he'll be a lottery pick. I think he'll get drafted either way after this year. I would love that. I would love for it to be Jaden Akins as well, because I think he has worked his way here at Michigan State and earned it. And I think Frankie will be a solid option, whether he falls in at the 2 option or the 3 option. He'll be up there in scoring as well, and with his ability to get to the line. But it has to be the emergence of someone being that go-to guy. So I'm curious, this first month or so of the season, figuring out who that guy is going to be. Next up, I want to go over my best case and worst case scenario for this team. And look, I'm the person to get the bad out of the way first. So worst case scenario for me for this team is it's the same as the past 4 regular seasons. You struggle to get over 10 wins in the conference. You have to stress and worry for the last third of the season if you're making the tournament again, have to win a big game or 2 down the stretch, and, even a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament, and you barely get into the tournament as a 8 to 10, 11 seed. I think that's worst case. Best case, if the sophomores take that leave, Jaden or Frankie emerge as the big scoring options on the wing, like we think they can, then I think a top 4 seed in the Big Ten is doable, meaning you're winning probably anywhere from 11 to 14 conference games. Next up, want to talk about the toughest stretch. Michigan State is, famous for having a tough stretch, end of January, somewhere in February, nice little 3-game losing streak, and then flipping the switch. At least that was the calling card for a handful of years. Last couple years, it's been a tough stretch, a couple tough stretches. But the toughest stretch, I believe, this year is, it's easy to say the West Coast swing when you go play USC, UCLA, for both sides, for the West Coast and the people in the, old Big Ten, for the teams and programs there. It's easy to say whether you go out west or you're coming out this way, that is the toughest stretch. And, I think that adds up this year. Beginning of February, you're going to USC and UCLA. And what makes this West Coast trip for those 2 games and the stretch that I'm going to talk about so much tougher is that you go out west and then you come home. You get home early Wednesday morning after playing Tuesday night in UCLA, and then you have to play Saturday at noon versus Oregon, who I think is going to be a pretty solid team this year. And then late Tuesday night, you play Indiana. Then the next Saturday night, you go to Champaign and play Illinois. Then you come home and you play Purdue. And then you go play your rival, Michigan, on the road. So, this is a brutal first 21 days in February, 7 games in 21 days. And I think this stretch is going to determine where you are sitting in the standings. If you do well throughout this stretch, you should be in that top third of the Big Ten. If you struggle, go 500 or below in this stretch, then I think you are securely in the middle to bottom third of the conference. So that's a big stretch there from February 1st to February 21st. Now, prediction. Where do I actually see them at the end of the year? I will say I am concerned with some things that we've talked about, in this recap or in this preview, and some things that we've seen in the summer and in the exhibitions. But that is mainly because there's so much unknown with this group. But I am optimistic with the new faces and new places, new positions, new roles. Right now, I have them 5th in the Big Ten to start the season. I really think it's Indiana, Purdue, and Illinois at the top right now. But there's so much unknown across the league this year. And I think, really 4 through 16 is kind of a mixed bag of teams that can go one way or the other. And it's really just up for grabs, as I said. And a 5 seed in the Big Ten probably equates to, if you can also win a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament, anywhere from a 4 to 7 seed in the NCAA tournament, depending on your resume as well. With a weaker Big Ten, probably on the lower side. So I think that puts a little more importance on those early season matchups. It's not a murderer's row non-conference schedule like Izzo has usually scheduled, but you do have Kansas in the Champions Classic. You have the Maui Invitational, which you could see UConn there. But, also the matchups with Purdue, Indiana, and Illinois, who I said I believe will be the top 3 teams in the conference, makes those matchups even more important. So that's where we sit right now. We'll be here all season long to recap everything. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.